What's going on, guys? Geoff here with Hookup Tackle. Today we are talking about glide baits. Now, glide baits have become very popular within the last few years. I would say it's probably the second most popular technique right now, right behind mid-strolling with a Sakamata shad on live scope. That's definitely number one. But number two, without a doubt, has to be glide baits. Now, these glide baits that a lot of these guys are fishing, they range anywhere from 5 to like 7 inches. And there's a couple different reasons for that. One of the reasons is like these tournament guys that are fishing them, they just need something that has a little more drawing power than like a jerk bait per se, and it helps them get like a quick kicker sometimes, and it can be really clutch. The normal guy that goes fishing, well, he wants to try some glide baits. He sees that a lot of guys are having success with it, so he goes out there and he wants something that's he can throw and be comfortable with and still get some bites. And so he's going to gravitate towards that 5 to 7 inch size glide bait. And a lot of people are fishing that size. They're having a lot of success fishing that size. But what I tell people is if they want to be a little more serious into the swim bait side of things, I always recommend trying a bigger size glide bait, anywhere from 9, 10, or 11 inches. And the main reason for that is to find a different caliber of fish that guys maybe might not be catching or seeing in their own bodies of water. Most people, when they throw that caliber of fish anywhere in the country, you're going to be catching that 1 pound fish all the way up to 10 pounds. Like, that's just what a 5 to 7 inch glide bait can possibly do for a lot of people. However, if there's a lot of pressure and some places have started to kind of catch on to the glide bait craze, well, that bigger class fish kind of wisens up to that 5 to 7 inch size, and they might start being a little more hesitant. They might not follow as much as those smaller fish will end up doing. So for me, I like to go up in size to that next caliber of size of glide bait. And that means throwing a bigger glide bait, getting a completely different setup, and just kind of grinding and figuring out like, okay, if I throw this caliber of glide bait, I can see bigger fish, I get more bites, I kind of weed out some of those smaller fish from wasting my time, or on a cast where there might be a few fish that follow. Maybe those smaller ones are more hesitant to bite, but that big one in the pack is willing to eat. So that's kind of my philosophy on going to that bigger glide bait. Obviously, it's kind of a pain in the ass to fish all day. I mean, it can be an absolute grind. You don't get as many bites, so the confidence to start with a big glide bait just isn't there for a lot of guys, and that just makes sense. I mean, if you're going to just go out and want to catch fish and have a good time, you throw that 5 to 7 inch size. If you want to step it up and really try and see what your body of water has in regards to trophy size bass, well, then I recommend trying to go up to that next level in size of glide bait. And today we're going to be talking about a new glide bait that just came out from Megabass, very popular brand. And a couple of years ago, they kind of redid their ISlide series, the 187R. I fished it, I caught a lot of fish on it. I really praise what they did and what they changed in it. Now we have this guy here, the ISlide 265R. This guy is big. So today we're going to be talking about this awesome new glide bait and why I think you guys should be able to pick one of these up and test it out. So without further ado, let's get right into today's video. So like I said, for the most part, if you're going to be stepping up to that much larger grade size swim bait, most guys are going to have to spend the money to get a new rod, a new reel, new line, all these things just to throw a bait that they might not have that much confidence in. Luckily, nowadays there's a lot of companies that are making very affordable rods that aren't going to cost you $400, $500, $600 plus dollars anymore. So that's really good. So there's plenty of options now for guys if they wanted to step it up to not blow a lot of money on a rod or a setup to just get started with. So it really just comes down to the price of some of these baits. Now, a lot of you guys know that I like fishing like the depth slide swimmer 250 or a Hinkle trout or a mother, like these really big, expensive glide baits. And that's kind of the problem when you start stepping up to these bigger glide baits. A lot of them start to cost a lot of money, and guys just, they're not with that. They're like, well, I've already spent all this money on the rod and the reel and getting the special line just so I can not snap off every cast. Now you're telling me I have to spend $200, $300+ just for the bait too that I might not even like? I'm gonna pass on the whole ordeal. So luckily, Megabass made this guy here. This guy retails at $89.99, which is a pretty good price, especially if you compare it to the new slide swimmers, which are $169.99, so almost half the price. And you basically get a very similar style bait. It's an ABS bait, mass-produced bait, and it's very similar to that slide swimmer. And so right now, for a guy that wants to kind of get into it, obviously I love the Depths 250. However, it is expensive. I completely understand that. So having a bait that's in this price range that does kind of a very similar job, I can't recommend enough. Now, the iSlide 265, what does the R even stand for? Well, it means revolutionize. Like I said before, Megabass kind of took a step back. They redid their iSlide series that wasn't very popular, and that was just because of how the bait swam. It kind of swam more nose down. It wasn't very fluid, and a lot of guys kind of just wanted something that was fluid because the 250 was so popular at the time, and other glide baits that were very fluid seemed to get more guys interested in fishing the bait. Doesn't mean that the baits were bad, it just means that people weren't wanting that specific action and it wasn't popular. So they took them off the market, went back, and they redid the hinge design here in the middle. They widened it out a little bit on the 187R, and then they introduced it, the same exact thing here in the 265. And so what that basically means is you can have a lot more fluid glide on it. You can still get that kind of slalom S motion that has kind of a nose down, but if you give it slight inputs of the rod and the reel, it'll actually just stay more fluid up on the surface, which is more popular for guys to fish that way. So they went in, redid it, and now we have the full size, the 265 size. Now this size, of course, it's big. It's very, very intimidating for a lot of guys. But the one fish that I've even caught on this bait recently was maybe 4 pounds. Like, not very big at all. A fish that lives in every single body of water in the entire country, from the north to the south, west, east, like that caliber of fish will still hit this bait. And I see a lot of guys, one of the reasons they say that, I live here in such and such place and the biggest bass around me is 4 pounds, 5 pounds. I don't need to throw that big bait. However, I know guys that are in Minnesota where the state record in Minnesota is 8 pounds, where these guys are throwing Hinkle trouts, they're throwing Ballin 300s, they're throwing mothers, like big glide baits, and they're having success in catching that 6, 6.5, 7 pound size fish, which is right there at state record. And a lot of guys just aren't throwing it, so they have, I think, more success in throwing that bigger glide bait because those fish just are not used to it. So that excuse of like, I've got this place and they don't really get it. Well, just because you've only seen or have caught fish that are in that 2 to 5 pound range doesn't mean that that caliber of fish, that 6, 7 or 8 pound fish, isn't in your body of water. You just haven't been able to see that fish follow or have had that fish commit to a bait. And throwing a big glide bait of this size can absolutely do that on your first few casts in a spot where you're like, man, I've caught fish on this specific structure or cover before, but I feel like a big one should live there. And sometimes just throwing that bigger bait, you'll draw out those smaller ones, but maybe behind or to the side, you'll see a fish where it's like, whoa, the fish is like way big. Like, I haven't seen one that big in here ever. So I've had that happen a few times in some of the urban spots where I fish, where I'm like, the biggest in here is 5 pounds. And my buddy ended up catching a 9 pounder on a Depths 250 a long time ago out of a tiny little urban spot where I had never seen a fish that big before ever. So Don't count them out just because of the size. Again, it's gonna be a little bit more of a grind fishing this size bait rather than a 5 to 7 inch. But if you wanted to step up your game and maybe try and catch that bigger class fish, throwing a bigger glide bait can absolutely work for you. So the bait is right around like that 10.5 inch range at 265 millimeters. It weighs 6.5 ounces, so very similar overall to that Depths 250. So it's a big bait. You're gonna need a rod that's like extra heavy rod, 8 foot to 8'6" extra heavy. I'm gonna be throwing it today on the Lowdown standard issue. This is the 8 foot extra heavy. It's a 2 to 8 ounce rod. This is kind of the perfect rod for anything that's in that 4 to like 6 ounce range. This rod works really, really well. And then I've got a Shimano. This is the Calcutta Conquest MD, the new version, 300. And then I'm throwing this on 20-pound fluorocarbon. Some guys can jump up to 25-pound. I don't think it makes that big of a difference. I just like the lighter line because I fish super gin clear water. So I like that with that, and it's a really, really solid setup. Again, there's different setups out there. Like I said, Okuma makes some stuff. Dobbin still makes some great extra heavy rods. Like, there's options out there that don't cost an arm and a leg. As far as reels go, you just want to get kind of a 7-to-1 gear ratio or higher. And a 200 or 300, I really recommend the 300 size. You don't need a 400 size, but I recommend 300, 20 to 25-pound mono fluorocarbon, whichever works best for you, and you're good to go. And that setup can throw a wide variety of different baits as well. So that's going to be the setup. Now, speaking more about the bait itself, out of the box, it looks just like this without the snap up here in the front. I just added that on there, but this is how it's going to come. It's a floating bait out of the box. So I'm going to be playing around with some tuning of the weights that I put on here, just to get it to be like kind of like a slow float if I possibly can. And what's nice is the bait has these swiveling hook hangers down here, which is nice. It seems to be kind of a standard nowadays for a lot of glide baits. And then you can also remove this tail. So if you wanted just to throw it in like a plain old box, I would first remove this tail so it doesn't get bent up out of shape. Just remove it, you can pull it down, push it back in, and it's super simple to put back on there. And that's it. Super simple, nothing crazy, but again, Megabass colors, Megabass quality. These hooks, yes, they are absolutely gigantic, but some guys are gonna run with it. They are sticky sharp, they're Megabass hooks, so they might be good for you. If I'm going to swap out the hooks, I'm gonna swap to a slightly bit smaller hook. I'm gonna swap to like this guy right here, the Ryugi Brutal, in a size 1 and maybe like a size 2, but most likely the size 1. It's got a little bit slimmer of a profile, but it's still a long shank. And I like this color a little bit better, but those hooks, split rings, solid quality. And then I just add like a 50 to 60 pound snap up here. This is a Decoy EX snap, really, really popular snap. I think this is a size 3 or 4 on here. Either one will work for this bait, and that's the bait right there. So let's test it out. Let's get some swim action for you guys and see what it looks like. Okay, so this is the float on it. And like I said, it's a pretty high floating bait. So when you cast it out, you kind of work it down a little bit. It doesn't get down very far, and it comes up pretty fast. It's got that kind of slow S style motion that's very popular. Now, we're gonna put some weight on this thing and get it to kind of how I like it. I think when it floats this much, you don't get the best glide out of the bait. So I'm gonna start adding some weight to the bottom of the bait here in a second. I'm gonna start adding some weight to the bottom of the bait right now. Okay, so I put a little 4-gram Zappu board weight back here behind this front hook hanger. And right now it is a kind of super slow sink. It sinks maybe a little bit faster. I probably could have put maybe like 2.5 grams back there, but for right now, I kind of like the sink on it. So let's check out how it swims now that I put that weight on there. So again, a nice slow, steady retrieve. You get that super nice, solid S-style motion. Now we're gonna give it some inputs here, how I would just normally fish the bait. And then this is the sink rate on it with that 4 grams on there. A nice slow, steady sink. If you wanted it to be a little bit slower even, you can take off those hooks and put those Ryugis on there. But overall, I think the swim on this thing is pretty spot on to what I think they were looking for. Stays more fluid on those harder inputs. It doesn't take a nosedive on you. It's pretty stable overall. And for me, no complaints, especially with a bait of this caliber and size, the quality of Megabass as well at $89.99. Pretty awesome bait. So that's the new Megabass Icelide 265 size. This thing is going to be an absolute staple for a lot of those guys kind of wanting to test out the waters of throwing a much bigger glide bait. You have the comfortability of throwing this bait, one, because it's a floater and you can adjust the sink rate. So if you do happen to snap it off, you can always just go and get it as well. I like that there's swiveling hook hangers. It's a Megabass product, so it's going to be high quality components all around. And it's just a really good looking lure. A lot of guys had success with that older version of the 262. So I think guys are going to be overall pretty stoked on this new bait. The colors come in are fantastic, amazing. So not much more I can say about this bait. That if you guys have any other questions regarding fishing the bait, just leave a comment down below and I'll try and get back to them as much as I possibly can. But yeah, that is the new Megabass Icelide 265. Again, I know big glide baits can be very intimidating, but if you wanted to take your swim bait fishing just to that upper echelon to try and see if what your body of water truly is capable of putting out, I highly recommend picking up a bigger glide bait, especially this time of year. You know, we're going into winter right now, and then we'll go into spring, kind of pre-spawn in spring. So this is kind of the best time of the year to even throw baits of this caliber and size. So without further ado, thank you guys ever so much for watching. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Jane.